I don't think he was really into it. He didn't think that through. If you're going to make a decision to follow Jesus and you haven't thought it through and you're not willing to sacrifice everything, you know what you end up? Lukewarm.
Hello, everyone. I hope you are having a great day. Today's message is brought to you by Pastor Jeff Rockey.
If you have your Bibles, you're going to want to turn to start with to Matthew chapter 10. Excuse me. We're going to get there in just a moment. So last week at the end of, or in the middle of the sermon, I referenced John 3, 25 to 30. And the last verse of that section simply says that he must increase and I must decrease. And I've just been, again, my week has just been filled with kind of that thought and the idea of sacrifice and what it really means to sacrifice in this day and age, right? I mean, again, we talked about it last week. We know what it looked like to sacrifice in the days before Jesus came, and we know that Jesus changed everything. But what does it mean then to sacrifice? What does it mean for him to increase continuously and for me to decrease, for us to decrease? Right? 7 simple words, I think, that sum up what it means to be a living sacrifice. He must increase and I must decrease. Because until we decrease to the point of disappearing, and that's what dying to self means, is that we just really disappear and all that's left is Jesus. That's it. And so that's the ultimate, right? That's what living sacrifice means. So until that happens, our sacrifice won't be complete. It just won't be. I know that can kind of sound discouraging. It's like, well, then will I ever get there? The answer is, sorry, no. We won't. Not on this side of heaven, right? But still, to not try means that we're not being those living sacrifices. So anyway, I've been considering what that looks like. And ultimately, the question I kept coming back to this week was, what is the price of the sacrifice that we must pay in order to really follow Jesus? What's the cost? What's the price of the sacrifice? And then I started asking, well, so did Jesus give us any examples? Did Jesus talk about this? Did he teach on what it looks like to live a sacrificial life? Did he talk about what it's going to cost? Did he talk about what we were going to have to do in order to become those living sacrifices? And I think I came across at least a couple of scriptures, 2 or 3, that could help us understand this. So, but again, it's like a lot of other scriptures. Like as you begin to really dig into it, they're hard. They're not easy scriptures. It's not like you can go, oh, that's going to be pleasant when you get done. It's not pleasant. I don't know how else to tell you that. It's just not. So you need to just remember that. So we're going to jump in, chapter 10, Matthew chapter 10. I'm going to read from 32 to 39. And this is what it says. Therefore, everyone who will acknowledge me before others, I will also acknowledge him before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I will also deny him before my Father in heaven. Don't assume that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I came to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Those are encouraging words, aren't they? And a man's enemies will be members of his household. The one who loves a father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. The one who loves a son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever doesn't take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Anyone who finds his life will lose it, and anyone who loses his life because of me will find it. Now, this whole chapter, not just that section, that section, yes, but this whole chapter is telling the disciples what to expect if they choose Jesus. So if you want to kind of know that, if you're trying to make that decision and you want to know what's it going to cost me, what's it going to look like, what's it going to take, read Matthew chapter 10, and it will help you understand it. But here's the deal. I don't think any of it is what they expected. None of chapter 10, if you go through and you read it, none of it is what they really anticipated. I mean, I'm sure, right? Because you can read it as you go back into the Gospels and you read it. It's like Jesus comes along, and we talk about it all the time. Jesus comes along, right? And he sees Peter and Andrew, and they're fishing, and he stops them in the boat, and he's like, "Hey guys, come follow me." And he does the same thing to James and John, right? They're fishing with their dad, and he's like, "Hey guys, come follow me." And they leave everything behind and they follow it, and we're all going, "This is great," right? And we all have this assumption, and maybe it's true, right? We have this assumption that it's like, but they left in gladness. They left with joy. They left in anticipation of what was coming. And then as they follow Jesus a little bit more, and they get more and more into it, and they hear more of his teaching, and then you come across something like Matthew 10 that talks about what they're going to face. And he says, "This is what I want you to do at the beginning of it. When you go out into a town, I don't want you to take anything with you. I want you to just depend on everybody else." They're like, "Well, we're not used to this. How are we going to eat?" "Don't worry about it. It'll be taken care of." That's not easy. Then you go on, and it talks about the persecutions that they're going to have to face. It talks about all these things, and then it says and then we get to the passage that we just read. "Don't assume that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword." They're like, whoa, time out. I didn't sign up for this. This is not what I anticipated when you called me to follow. And I think the same thing sometimes is true of us. When we think about following Jesus, we typically think about what we're going to experience. And we think about what we're going to experience basically from the world, right? If I follow Jesus, there's going to be peace in my life. I mean, after all, it says that he's come to be the Prince of Peace. He's come to, right? And so we're like, there should be peace in my life. Why do I face all this upheaval? Why do I have all these troubles? Why do I have all these difficulties? Why do I face depression? Why do I face discouragement? Why is it that everything seems to be so hard? What is going on? This is not what I signed up for. Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. We think there's going to be peace. We think there's going to be unity, right? The church is going to be an amazing thing because everybody's going to get along. We're all going to see things 100% the same way. We're all going to be happy just to be around each other. Have you been in the church lately? Right? That there's going to be this unity. We get this idea that and I'm not saying that Jesus doesn't form those things, but it's like, no, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be trouble. It's like my family is all of a sudden, if I come to follow Jesus, all of a sudden my family is going to be this amazing unit and we're all going to see things the same way. And everybody's going to go, "I wish that my house was like the Rockey household." No, you don't. Right? But that's what we think, that there's going to be this amazing transformation that happens. And it's just going to be this moment. It's more like a moment at times. We think following Jesus is going to be that way. We think following Jesus is going to be full of, that everybody's going to have all this grace and forgiveness. That everybody's going to look at us and go, "Well, he's just following Jesus, so there's this grace that we need to have. There's this forgiveness that we need." And yes, there should be, right? But there's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of judgment. And at times, Jesus even tells us, hold each other to that accountability. So we think all those things are going to happen. And I think the disciples thought those things were going to happen too, that there was just going to be this peace, there's going to be this unity, there's going to be this joy, there was going to be this amazing thing. You know, I get to be with the Master, I get to be with the Messiah, I get to be with the teacher, I get to be with one. Everything's going to be fine from here on out. But when you look at the life that they lived, when you look at the things that they struggled, how they struggled, when you look at the way that people treated them, when you look at all the things that they had to do, we don't see those things that we think should be there. This passage reminds us that our lives should exemplify those things, right? I should be the bringer of peace. I should be the bringer of unity. I should be the bringer. That's a weird word. I don't even know if it is one. But anyway, sorry. Stop it. Right? We should be the ones who bring grace and forgiveness. But we shouldn't expect those things in return, not from this world. In fact, as we just read, following Christ will often cause the opposite. I mean, if you look at that passage, right? I didn't come to bring peace, I came to bring a sword. I came to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be the members of his own household. It's pretty clear when you look at that passage that Christ divides between us and loyalty to the world. Christ came to divide. I know that sounds weird, but I'm just telling you what it says. It came to divide between us and loyalty to the world. We were just praying about it, and you've all brought it up. I don't recall a more turbulent time politically in our nation than it is right now. Not in my lifetime. I mean, I think there have been some. I think there have been moments, right? I mean, and maybe, I wasn't. By the way, some of you think I was. Some of our kids think I was. I was not around during the Civil War, just so you know, okay? So I can't tell you what it was like then, but like for now, in this lifetime, I don't remember there being a more turbulent time. And both sides are saying similar things. If you're a follower of Jesus, how can you agree what the other side is doing? They're all saying the same thing. And we're like, can't we get along? Christ came to divide. Because right now what we're trying to do is we're trying to put Jesus' principles, we're trying to put Christian principles, biblical principles, in a world where they're just not there. And it doesn't matter which side you're on. I'm just being honest with you. And I get annoyed that it seems that it's politically incorrect to call attention to any lifestyle or any ethnicity or any religion, except it's still okay to harass Christians. Right? And that's annoying to me, but folks, it's biblical. It's going to happen. It's just the way it is. So we can be annoyed all we want. But it's a part of the sacrifice that we make, isn't it? It's like, listen, if I'm going to follow Jesus, if you're going to follow Jesus, don't expect the world to understand. Don't expect the world to come along beside you and say, good job. Like, most of the time what you're going to get is, how ridiculous are you? How naive are you? How can you possibly believe those things? You'll get more of that. And Jesus told us that's what we could expect. So he divides between us and our world. Right? But he also came to divide between us. This is the sacrifice. Christ divides between us and preferences of family relationships. Like I said, we think that if we come to Christ, that everything's going to be fine, that like our homes are going to be fine, that our kids are all going to go away. Yes, this is what we've been waiting for. Doesn't always work that way. There are times when it works that way, and I'm grateful. And I'm grateful that we don't stop trying. Kevin, don't stop trying. Don't ever stop, right? Because we've seen God restore so many things, and I'm grateful when those things happen. But understand, that is God doing that. That is the blood of Christ accomplishing those things. It's not us, and it's not because you decided to follow him. It's because Jesus has entered into that relationship. But Jesus says, listen, the one who loves a father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. I think, and this one's even harder. The one who loves a son or a daughter more than me is not worthy of me. I don't know about you, but man, there was something in my life changed the moment my kids came around. Right? There was something that was it was completely different than any love I had ever felt, any love I had ever experienced, anything like that. And it's like, this is all consuming. It's everything. And Jesus says, if you don't love me more than that, then there's something wrong. There's something wrong. And so he's like, I'm going to fight for you, and I want that first place. I want that top spot. And so if you're going to love them more, we're going to have a problem. We're going to have an issue. And so he says, so I come to divide that so that you can put things in the right order of priority. And that's a sacrifice. It is. So he divides between families. He divides between us and the world. And maybe even harder still, as I read through this, Christ also divides between us and our pursuit of status, our ego. He wants to put that to death. Right? But our culture, and I mean, we live in a self-centered culture. I don't know how else to tell you that, but we do. You know how I know that? I can't tell you the number of times that it's like, seriously, and it's nothing but a selfish thing. I just want Chick-fil-A to be open on Sundays. Because there's times when I just want the Lord's chicken sandwich. Right? And it's like, but they're not. They're just not. And it's like, come on, get with the program. Don't you have any compassion for me whatsoever? And I get upset about it. It's crazy. It's insanity. But we put so many things like in our own egocentric world where it's like, Jesus, if you loved me, you'd have Chick-fil-A open on Sundays. Right? I don't know, there's just these things where Christ came into, where we think he came in to make everything good for us, but he really came in to divide it. Because he needs us to know where we stand in relationship to him and what he wants that relationship to look like. When you choose Christ, you choose a side that creates division with the world. You sometimes choose a side that creates division amongst family. You sometimes choose a side that makes that even creates division within yourself. But the sacrifice that you make when you choose to follow Jesus is you choose to lose your life. You choose to give it up. That leads to our second scripture. Let's turn over to the Gospel of Luke, if you would. Luke chapter 9. Again, you're going to find a lot of similarities in the three passages of Scripture that we're going to look at this morning. So the second one, there's some similarities here. Luke chapter 9, verse 23. Again, he's talking to his disciples. He says this. Then he said to them all, if anyone wants to follow after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life because of me will save it. For what does it benefit someone if he gains the whole world and yet loses or forfeits himself? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes into his glory, and that of the Father and of the holy angels. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom come. Now, we can talk about that last verse at another point in time. But it's no accident that I've chosen both of these passages to include the idea of taking up your cross. Right? They've both mentioned that. It's like, take up your cross and follow me. And we've had a lot of discussions about take up your cross. And I probably haven't had any more discussions about that than I had with anybody than I have with Greg. What does that mean? What is he asking us to do? What does it look like? And I came across this quote in my reading this week. It's just this word picture of sacrifice, to take up the cross. It says, to pick up a cross means walking against the grain of cultural values so that our own expectations and needs take a back seat to God's will. To take up your cross means that your needs take a back seat to the will of God. And I know we've talked about that before. You're like, that's no big deal. I understand that. But listen, here's what you need to understand as well, that in Roman times, this was a phrase, take up your cross, in Roman times at that point. And in Roman times, when someone picked up their cross, they knew where they were going. They knew where that was headed. And there was no mistaking it. Anybody that you saw carrying a cross, with the exception of a few that like Simon, who Jesus fell, and so Simon had to pick that up and carry it for him. But for the most part, anybody you saw carrying a cross in Roman times, you knew exactly where they were going. You may not know why, but you know where. And you knew that the outcome of what that was going to be. They were headed to the place of crucifixion, and they were headed towards their death. So when Jesus said, pick up your cross, there was really no misunderstanding about what he meant. For us, we kind of have these other pictures, these different ideas, because it's been long enough now since anybody's been crucified that we don't have those same pictures in our head. It's like, oh, so you want me to just kind of carry these burdens? You want me to take up these sins and bring them to you. You want me to, and yes, those things are true, but what you don't remember, and what we usually don't remember, is that taking up our cross meant that we were headed to death. So when Jesus says, pick up your cross and follow me, the disciples probably had a different perspective on it than we did. When he said pick up the cross, it meant that they were fully aware of where they were headed, and they were aware of what it led to. Again, when Jesus picked up his cross, he was headed toward Golgotha, and he was headed toward the end of his life here. But when we pick up our cross, what did he ask us to do? What's he asking us when he says, take up your cross? We talked a little bit about it last week. If you're going to pick up your cross, something has to die. Something has to die. And when Jesus says, take up your cross, that thing that's going to die, it's you. It's your will. It's your desires. It's what you think about yourself. It's your ego. It's all those things. It has to die. So when we pick up our cross, we should be headed, to figuratively to the altar, to put everything on the cross and let it die there. Those are great metaphors, I think, right? Pick up your cross, take your life to the altar, nail everything to the cross. Those would be great songs. They are. But here's the thing. I was talking about it with the guys at the center on Wednesday. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but it just came into my mind again, just to ask the question, what's the difference between surrender and sacrifice? Because we use those words interchangeably in the church, but they're not the same. Surrender and sacrifice, I think, are two different things. Surrender is something that you offer, that you give, right? Sacrifice is something that you kill and you leave. There's too many times that when we surrender something, we pick it back up again. Lord, I give you this, but if you would, let me have it back. Sacrifice isn't that way. It's there, it's dead, it's done. And when Jesus says, take up your cross, he's not asking you to surrender anything. He's asking you to sacrifice for it to be dead, for it to be done. I was thinking of an example of this, and I thought of Abraham and Isaac in Genesis 22, right? Many of you know the story. Abraham is promised a son, and through a bunch of different circumstances, finally, he and Sarah have Isaac, the one son, and God tells Abraham that I want you to take your son, and I want you to go out and build the altar, bring the stones, bring the sticks, bring the firewood, bring all that stuff. He says, because I want you to sacrifice your son to me. And of course, Abraham's thinking, this is your promise to me. How is this going to work? But Abraham has faith, and so he goes along with it, right? And they come to that point again. You can read the story if you don't know this story in Genesis 22. Read it, God asks Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. And as they get there, and he gets to the point where Isaac is laying on the altar, right? And he has the knife raised, ready to bring it down upon his son. Who knows what Isaac is thinking in the midst of all that? I mean, all kinds of stuff is going through my head. But as he's preparing to make that final motion, then God stops him. And he provides a lamb. Amazing story. And I read that story oftentimes and I think, man, I'm glad he isn't asking us to sacrifice our sons and daughters. And this week I realized, but he is. He is. He's asking us positionally to sacrifice our sons and our daughters. And every day, it might be something else for you. Maybe it's not a son or a daughter. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a job you have. Maybe it's something that you hold dear. Maybe it's some kind of a possession that you have. Whatever it is, he's asking you every day, would you give me that person or the thing that you hold most dear? Will you give that to me? Will you sacrifice that? Will you put that on the altar and let it be dead to you? But there's a difference between us and Abraham. He's not stopping us. He stopped Abraham. But he's not stopping us. Because he doesn't want you to it's not just a test of faith. It's not just, it's an action that he's looking for. Again, I'm not telling you to go kill your children. Okay? All right. What I am telling you, though, is to go back to these passages and go, unless you're willing to put those children or those things or whatever it is, unless you're willing to put them underneath the will of God, and then Jesus isn't asking you to stop until you do, until those things are dead. in comparison to him. He says it over and over again through the Old Testament and the New Testament. Don't have any gods before me. Right? Jesus says, the one who loves a father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. When he was calling his disciples, the bigger circle of disciples, and one of them said, I'd love to follow you, but first let me go and bury my father. And Jesus said what? Let the dead bury the dead. It's a sacrifice. What are you sacrificing? He's asking us for everything. Everything. But that's what sacrifice means, by the way. It's everything. And I know it's hard. I understand. I get it. Because there's a cost to sacrifice. And like everything else, we have to figure out whether it's worth the cost. When you go to buy a vehicle, don't go buy a vehicle right now. Anyway, when you go to buy a vehicle, you have to count the cost. Do I have it? Do I not? Can I do it? Can I not? Is it worth it? Is it not? And you have to make that decision. And sometimes when you're making those decisions, you decide, I'm going to have to sacrifice something else, which means I'm going to have to do without in order to be able to do that. When you go to buy a house, when you go to buy whatever it happens to be, right? You have to decide, is that worth what I'm going to have to sacrifice in order to do it? And we have to have that same perspective, that same idea when it comes to following Jesus. What am I going to have to give up? And you count the cost. Last scripture to look at. Just turn the page a little bit, Luke 14. You're going to catch a theme here, by the way. Luke 14, chapter 14, verse 25 says this. Now great crowds were traveling with him, so he turned and said to them, if anyone wants to come to me and does not hate his own father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, wanting to build a tower, doesn't first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, after he has laid the foundation and cannot finish it, all the onlookers will begin to ridicule him, saying, this man started to build and wasn't able to finish. Or what king going to war against another king will not first sit down and decide if he's able with 10,000 to oppose the one who comes at him with 20,000? If not, while the other is still far off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. In the same way, therefore, everyone of you who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciples. So what does it cost? Everything. Not my words, those are his. What's it cost? Everything. And you don't go into it without knowing that, because it will just, like the guy building the tower who only gets partway done, or whatever it is that he's building, he only gets partway done and everybody else goes, I don't think he was really into it. He didn't think that through. If you're going to make a decision to follow Jesus and you haven't thought it through and you're not willing to sacrifice everything, you know what you end up? Lukewarm. Lukewarm. And people go, man, they didn't think that through, did they? They didn't think it through. Jesus, last week, living sacrifices. If you're going to be a living sacrifice, you have to leave everything. I'll use a sports analogy. You have to leave everything on the floor. You shouldn't have anything done left by the time you're done. It's going to cost you everything. So choose whether it's worth it. Could have cost you everything. Father,
We hope that your life was enriched by today's word. If so, leave us a comment and let us know what stuck out to you today. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of our new content. Have a blessed day.